I would say that comic books and comics in general have always had a big impact on my life. I've always been a big fan of Spider-Man, Superman, the Hulk. My dad had a massive comic book collection when I was younger that he used to share with me all the time. And one of my fondest memories was getting an issue of Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man #1, where the black suit returns and he has to fight it off. Very, very popular issue. I have to say though that at a certain point in my life, comic books became more important than they probably should have been. I would say this is right around the time that my father died when I was 8 years old. This is something known as the Batman complex. And everybody knows the story of Batman. It's a pretty well-known story throughout comic book history. Basically, Batman became who he was because of the fact that his parents were murdered in an alleyway on their way home from the movies. And from there, he became a vigilante fighting for justice, avenging his parents' death. It's a well-known story. When I was 8 years old, I was told that my father had died. Now, this is where things get complicated. It turned out that later on down the line, I had discovered that my father had actually committed suicide. And this is a decision that my mother made when I was 8, and it's one that I still respect to this day. She didn't tell me the full details. I mean, should an 8-year-old really know about such things? It's a pretty heavy subject. So at age 8, when I was told that my father had died, I had just assumed that he was murdered. A small part of me kind of treated it as like a superhero origin story. I became obsessed with finding out who had killed my father. I became obsessed with Batman comics and Spider-Man with the whole Uncle Ben thing, and it really kind of drove a lot of my life for a long time. I found out the truth about my father when I was in high school, and the way I found out was pretty random. I just kind of just read it on a piece of paper while I was eating dinner. My mom was seeing a therapist, and she had left some information out on the table, and I read it, and I kind of just was a little shocked at first, but it's kind of crazy. Like, imagine if Batman had found out that his parents weren't murdered, but they had killed themselves. Would he still have become Batman? Especially when he was like already kind of doing Batman-like stuff for a while, which in my case as an 8-year-old between the ages of 8 and 14 wasn't much besides pretending that I was fighting for something bigger than myself. But you know, at age 9, you don't really have that much to fight for besides your Skittles or whatever. But yeah, it's something crazy to think about. Like, what if Batman had found out that his parents committed suicide? Would he have become Batman? For me, when I had found out, it had caused a pretty massive rift for me and my family. I became very separated from my family for a while, and I was kind of lost for a while, just trying to find out exactly where I was trying to do. I thought I was kind of on this path of solving the grand mystery of what my life was and who killed my father, and I was going to become this hero for my family and myself, and that was all kind of pulled out from underneath me. So I was kind of like, well, now what? But then I realized that I still had this pain that was there, still there, that loss that was still there. And when it comes to the idea of suicide, it's something that is arguably the most selfish thing you can do as a person because of the trickle-down effect that it has on not just your close family, but your coworkers, everybody. It's a very selfish, just inner move to make, and it's a very final move to make. There's no coming back from that. It's something I never quite will understand as I get older, I kind of get it. You know, life gets hard, and sometimes you just don't want to be here anymore. But you know, this life is also beautiful, and there's so many different things that we can experience, and we don't really know what's on the other side. And it's not like anybody has really solved that equation yet. So you kind of have to just appreciate what you got and work to your best every day. Every day, if you just get a little bit better than you were yesterday, then, you know, you're doing something. And, you know, sometimes you're not going to reach that goal. And sometimes you're going to want to quit, and sometimes you're going to want to stop. But then I think about Batman. I think that if Batman had found out, like later on down the line, that had happened with his parents, he would still be Batman. He would still, I think he would fight harder, actually. I think that Batman would find a way to really put more purpose behind just avenging his parents' death. I'm sure Batman has thought about suicide before. I'm sure that there's times that he wishes that he couldn't, wishes that he could be better than what he was. He fails all the time. I guess the point is that when it comes to following heroes and what makes somebody a hero, it's not about the origin story. And it's not about getting hit with the nuclear ray or the gamma rays to the face or whatever superhero, or getting bit by a radioactive spider, whatever superhero you follow. It's not about that. It's what you do with it. It's what you do with that ability. And I think I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm trying to do with it. But I know that I still want to be a hero. And I think that when I found out about everything when I was younger, it took me a while to figure that out. But whatever I can leave behind for people to resonate with and grasp onto, then that's good enough for me. And hopefully we can find a way to just push through it all. My name is Jaron Ikner. Thank you for watching Visual Memoirs. I'll be back with more cool stories from my life, thoughts from my mind, heart, and soul. Be sure to subscribe to the page, and I'll be back soon. One love.